If you are new here and you want to know what is this guy doing, what is this live about, what this live is about me sharing my beliefs and very macro ideas of what's happening in the US, mostly, and what's happening in the world, and what I think are the problems and solutions to that. That's basically in a nutshell.
Business owner, educator, and lifelong observer of politics and economics, making sense of complex issues.
And so, what I wanted to, instead of talking about a particular topic, like last week, I think I talked at length about the new prime minister in Japan and sharing her philosophy and ideology and what might happen under her. Today, I wanted to share some basic things that I believe in, that I've come to realize or understand, but also that those things are also in flux, that they're always changing. And if one of my, you know, when I say that, one of my core beliefs is that culture, language, society is not static. It is always changing. Even when we celebrate things like traditions and festivals and, um, appreciation of what's come before us, those are moments frozen in time. So, whatever your tradition is, it's always a copy of what it really was. So, if you are in Japan, they celebrate a lot of festivals, praying for a harvest and praying for good crops and praying for the gods to protect them and praying for, they'll even have prayers for driving and prayers for working and prayers for exams, and no one's religious. It's just tradition, and it doesn't mean that it is something that needs to be protected. It's not something that needs to be kept, and it's not something that people are losing. Culture is something that's always changing. You're not being denied or having something taken away. It's just growing and moving on. And my core beliefs are like that. They are often changing. And one of my core beliefs is that when you have a superstructure that is a robust democracy, which is what the US is, which is what Australia, Japan, UK, most of the OECD is. They're strong, long established democracies. The US being the longest continuous democracy in history. And your institutions are secure and, you have your moments, but just generally, your democracy is very solid. And in societies like that, you don't have the situation where you descend into chaos or something like that due to a leader. So this happens in other countries where they will slide into tyranny given the ideology of the leader that takes control. In the case of the US, this is very, very, very unlikely to happen, as is in most of the OECD. So, why do I say that? Because when you elect a socialist, you don't get to be a socialist country or city in the case of New York. And my regulars have heard me say this a million times. So if you were to elect, say, Bernie Sanders as president or Mamdani as mayor, it doesn't mean you now become part of the Comintern or you become a socialist country or city. That's not how that works. In other countries, that can happen. But in most, it doesn't. And we had it in Australia where we had one socialist prime minister once. And all the good stuff that we got from that, we kept. And we didn't have any bad stuff, really. So he got kicked out before he tried. He was very pro-Soviet Union. And he got kicked out before he tried the really radical stuff. And that's what I mean. There are safeguards. There are guardrails. And that's why when you elect a far left person, you don't get far left stuff. You get center stuff because it gets watered down. It gets it goes through the filter of the dominant paradigm and becomes something that's palatable, acceptable, and reasonable for the majority of people. And that's why Mamdani being elected mayor of New York, if that happens, doesn't scare me at all. Doesn't bother me because I don't see what some people see happening. So I saw reports of there being a flight or exodus of the wealthy. Maybe some, but how much more than normal? And, I don't think it's going to be at all as terrible as people expect. And at the same time, it won't be as wonderful, and you won't get all those things. If you are of that persuasion, you're not going to get all those things you think that a socialist is going to bring. You won't get them. I promise you that. So, all in all, I think electing, in my core belief, in strong democracies, is electing socialist leaders is good for the economy. And why do I say that? Because they put money into the economy. Cities and countries are not households. They're not individuals. They can do things that we can't do. Austerity is not good for cities and countries. Okay? But it's going to take years. People think that, an administration gets elected and therefore everything that starts happening in that administration is a result of that administration. That is never true. That is absolutely never true, because there are always policies that are continuing. There's new stuff that makes things happen straight away, most certainly. But there's also other stuff that's occurring underneath that is continuing, not only from the last administration, but from decades before. Things like, talk about SNAP, right? Things like food. You cannot measure how beneficial that is for decades, at least a decade, until those kids are grown up. And it's the same, I know Freakonomics guys get rubbished quite a bit, but there's truth in it. Read some of the stuff that they've said about health policies and spending policies, and it can take. Education is a great example. It takes decades for this stuff to show up. So when you say a generational shift is occurring, yeah, I don't know. I don't think so. I think it's just interesting. And I think it's good, but I don't think it's a seismic shift of anything, really. Okay? China's policy and laws on social media influences. Yeah, that's really interesting. That's a really good one. So that's really good. Yeah. I haven't had a really good look at it. If people don't know what this is, the Chinese government has made it so that if you give it financial advice on your TikTok or, whatever you do, YouTube, etc., you have to have qualifications to do that. And I think that's reasonable. I know of a few YouTubers that are giving financial advice, and they're not qualified to do so. And it's very China, Japan, that kind of thing, to require you to get a license. In Japan, you need a license to teach tea ceremony. Matcha, how to make matcha. To teach someone how to make matcha, you need to have a license to do that. And I think you can even get a license for putting on a kimono, right? Teaching someone how to put on a kimono. I think there's actually a license or accreditation for that. So, It's not as in our Western perspective as big a thing as perhaps we might think it is. To just comment on that, about China's policy and laws on social media influences. Okay. I did want to ever so lightly make a dig at a politician that I saw this morning on television as I was watching the BBC. So bear with me while I'm mean for a moment. Kevin Kiley, I think his name was. I could have got that wrong. But he is a Republican congressman for California. I totally disagree with his politics. But more importantly, I disagree with his haircut choice. And I saw him on this morning. I don't know what had happened, whether he'd just woken up and showered, but he's had his hair all combed back and it was a little bit long. And he looked like he'd been on a bender and had his hair all slicked back like an 80s finance bro. And he was young and yet looked old and evil. And I was just sitting there. I was trying to listen to the content of the interview where he was talking about the gerrymandering in California, but I was stuck on his hair and sat there figuring out how to fix it. And so my advice to him, if he's listening, is to cut your hair, bring it forward, and sweep your fringe across a little bit like mine, and it'll make you look a lot more approachable. So that's a message for Congressman Kevin Kiley from California. I just needed to get that out of the way because it was just bothering me. The museum is incredible. Another one of my core beliefs: at colonialism is not the reason for everything. So the era of colonialism saw wealth and resources extracted from the colonies and brought back to Europe. And this is why there's no such thing as reverse racism, right? That you, there are things that I can't say because of the history of the world. And that the only way to reverse that is that if you were to reverse colonialism. But that said, colonialism is not the reason for all the failings of certain areas in the world. And I would suggest to people that a better understanding of this can be found at, and I'm going to blank on this, and I can only remember the philosopher's name. I can't remember his channel. So you're going to have to look at it. It's a really basic, the name of his channel and the name of his YouTube, and it's even on here on TikTok, is really simple. But there's a good explanation of why countries are poor. And one of the contributing factors is colonization. And a lot of excuses are made by fairly right-leaning people that once the colonial leaders left the countries, they went into decay, even though all these institutions and infrastructure had been provided to them, which is completely wrong because those peoples weren't included in that infrastructure and institutions. They were excluded so as to keep power in the colonizers' hands. So that said, when colonial countries did leave the colonies and they did go into decay, it wasn't just that it was because they had been colonized. It was also because of one of the reasons, in a sense, that they had been colonized was that there are difficulties in those areas. And that if you look at Alan de Botton, I'm saying it in French, but he's English. But if you look at some of his videos about this, it's really easy to understand. location, geography, soil content, the insects. There's all kinds of things going on that contribute to it. But colonization is a factor, but it's not the only factor. Do you want to hear something really funny? I don't know if it's that funny, but I thought New Jersey was part of New York. Like I kind of, let's just say, for foreigners, we do get confused with New York, New York. So we understand that there's New York City and then there's New York State. But I thought New Jersey was part of New York State. I didn't know that it was its own state. Casinos, another core belief. Okay, we're random. We're being very random here. Okay. There's a significant, but New Jersey is a state, isn't it? I don't think I knew that. I think I thought perhaps that New Jersey was a borough. Maybe. Oh, you know what I'm mixing up? I just realized what I'm mixing up. I'm mixing up New Jersey and Staten Island. No? Is that a thing? Is Staten Island a thing? Am I just making up a place? Oh dear. I'm giving too much away about how much I don't know about U.S. geography. I sail. And so I go to another prefecture where it's beautiful. And my daughter does a lot of competitions and training there. And so I go there a lot and have been going there a lot for the last 10 years. And I can see its economic decline literally in front of my eyes. I can see its economic decline. For example, there was a Ferris wheel at an amusement park on the seaside. It closed down. The Ferris wheel was torn down. The amusement park has been shrinking. It's now become a ghost town, basically. So this prefecture, we don't have casinos in Japan, right? The federal government said, we're going to do like Australia did. We're going to sell a few licenses to allow a couple of casinos. This is what Australia did. We didn't have gambling either. In that sense, we had, horses and dogs and stuff like that, but we didn't have casinos. So the government sold these licenses in Australia to the top bidder, and that makes a fortune out of it. So the Japanese government decided to do this, and the prefecture that I go to had the option to do this. And so stupidly, and I'm honest about this, stupidly, they asked the people what they think. And guess what? The people said no. Because, casinos are bad. And it's like, yeah, casinos are bad. But you've got to weigh up what is going to be worse. Continuous economic decline that sees people end up in poverty, or a casino that helps lift the population, lift your economic and tax base, provide for those who are experiencing economic difficulties and subsequently gambling addictions, which will happen. Will that outweigh the problems you're going to have without that casino there? And my core belief is that the casino would have provided a way out and a way to better provide services for the inhabitants of that prefecture. And they rejected it, and stupidly the state listened to them, and the neighboring prefecture, Osaka, which is rich, got it. And I don't even think they asked the people. I think, I don't know, I'd have to check on that. But Osaka got it. And they're going to build the casino, and they're going to make a fortune out of it. And yes, some people will develop a gambling addiction, but the income that they will derive from that as a city will be able to provide help for those people and for more people. And that's the point. Okay, so that's my sort of thought on that. No, we don't have casinos, but we are getting them. And I don't like casinos, but I also don't like poverty. you know, and you got to do what you got to do. And if you have a casino and it's fairly limited to, international high rollers like they do in Australia, but it is open to the general public as well, you're going to make more from it than you're going to be, then it's going to be a negative impact on the community, is my belief. Thank you for the geographic explanations. I can see them as I'm talking here. Okay. Staten Island is a thing and it's a borough. And I think I was mixing that up with New Jersey, which is a separate state. I'll get it. Okay. So, one of my core beliefs is that philosophy is, this is going to bother a lot of people, that philosophy is an improvement on religion. Now, I'm not saying discard religion. And I guess that is another core philosophy of mine, is that whenever I say I believe in something, it doesn't mean I totally disregard something else. Oh, thank you, Keiko. It means that, nothing is ever for me 100%, although I live in Japan and these guys, they go from 0 to 100% like you wouldn't believe. But I'm not like that. And so when I say philosophy is better than religion, I say it as adding to it. Like renewable energy, will never be, maybe, but right now we're not going to be totally reliant on renewables. It's an addition to the fossil fuels that we use. We're increasing our consumption of energy. Therefore, if we increase the way we create it through renewables, that's better. So I feel like that with philosophy. If you have religion, that's fine. Have it. But add philosophy to it. I think philosophy is an improvement on it. The problem with philosophy is that it's so dense and difficult and incomprehensible to most people. And you know what? It is to me. It totally is to me. I can read, and I have read a lot of philosophy, and I can confidently say I didn't understand 95% of it. Like, not at all. But it's like osmosis. It seeps into your decision making in the background. And I think that's the same for people that have religion. You're not consciously aware of the things you do that they're relating to your religion. You're acting without being aware that those things have influenced you. And I think philosophy is like that. What I would like to see in the world is more people read more philosophy, especially students at high school. Oh, thank you. Where'd that? That's like my third cap ever. Oh, thank you, Gecko. I would like to see more high school and university students study basic philosophy, just so they have those tools to go into the world and be more. Oh, thank you so much. I'm getting lots of gifts today. And, they just have more tools at their disposal. That's what I mean about that. So, for me, I'm able to look at things the way I do because of philosophy. And I think that that's, I know that in Australia, I did an education degree. So I was a teacher in Australia. At high school level, we have philosophy as an elective subject that kids can do. I think that's really good. And I know that in American universities, you have a first year, I forget what it's called, but you have a first year of university where you do a little bit of everything. And I think that's really cool too. We don't have that. So when we start our degrees are only 3 years, our undergraduate degrees, and we go straight into our majors. We don't mess around. And I think that 1 year of a broad range of subjects is humanities is really good. So that's sort of my thoughts on philosophy. And I guess the point of saying that is, if you read philosophy and you don't get it, don't worry. if you enjoy it, if that doesn't, if you let that not bother you, and understand that most people don't understand it, you'll get something out of it. And start off with simple stuff. I often recommend Kierkegaard, and of course Nietzsche and Camus, and of course all those people. But I recommend Kierkegaard for religious people, because a lot of people in the US are religious, more so than Australia and Japan. And Kierkegaard is good because Kierkegaard doesn't reject religion and is angry about the way the church exists, and comments on that, and still maintains a belief and faith in God, which is cool. And I read it, and I'm not of that persuasion. My core beliefs. Why did I decide to do this today? Because I make a lot of videos on varying things, and a lot of people sometimes get mixed up. And for example, I made a video the other day about how I saw people on TikTok asking for money to clear their debts. And it reminded me of something a few years back when I saw a guy, I think it was on Facebook, said he'd started a GoFundMe for himself after there'd been an earthquake and it had trashed his house. And people were surprised that I would be so cold as to say I didn't think that was cool. And I just thought, when I saw the TikTok of this person asking for money, and they said, if it was something like, if 90,000 people sent me 50 cents, I'd clear my debt. And so I did the math and went, whoa, that's not debt. You're doing really good. If that's your debt. And then I prefaced it with, I don't know what that debt is. If that includes a mortgage, then that's a pretty good position to be in. But if that's debt from medical bills, or, if you're unable to, pay that debt back, of course, that's a crisis. And, I understand all those things. But I just generally think that that amount of debt for a person is not much debt. And it reminded me of the earthquake guy. So his house got hit by an earthquake, and it was big here. And there was a lot of donations and a lot of, thought, and people were going there and helping cleaning up. And I actually considered going, but I couldn't get away from work. And this guy showed his house, and everyone commented, oh man, that's terrible. And then a few days later, he starts a GoFundMe. Like, I saw your house. You've got nice stuff. You're not so bad off that you can't afford earthquake insurance. I have earthquake insurance. It's expensive. So I go without other things so that I can have earthquake insurance. It's not like it's priced out of everybody's ability. It just means you sacrifice something to have that. And it just bugged me. It's not a big thing. It doesn't bother me, that much. But I mentioned it in a video, and people got upset. Like, well, that's who I am. I'm not. I get put on the left all the time, but it doesn't mean I don't believe in personal responsibility. Right? So, that's where that was. But anyway, what was Sparky Girl asking? Oh, Andrew Mountbatten Windsor. So, speaking of personal responsibility, I don't like the whole royal family thing. I'm an Australian. I would love to see Australia become a republic. And it's getting Australia to become a republic is like changing the constitution in the US to get an amendment. It's really hard. You need to have a majority of the states get a majority. There's only 7 states. So you need to get 4 states to get a majority of the people to vote for getting rid of the monarchy and changing to a republic. And it always sits about 50-50 and never gets passed. Thank you so much. Getting so many gifts today. Thank you. So on that basis, right, that I'm not a big fan of the royal family, I think it's great for the UK. It's a great business move. You know, the UK should keep the royal family. Probably. I could be convinced otherwise. I'm open to that. But as it stands right now, if you said to me, should they get rid of the monarchy in the UK, I'd say no, it's a great money spinner. It's cool, it looks good, it brings people, it attracts people, it provides an emotional, it has emotional value and traditional value for the country. It's okay. So in that sense, what the king did to remove, and these are things that maybe Americans don't really understand, the titles and the things that he has, Prince Andrew, he is born with those, and then they get topped up. And the only way to remove some of them is through the government enacting legislation, or through the king removing them, and he can't remove all of them. So, for example, the king is in the process, because this doesn't happen instantaneously, is in the process of removing his prince title. Now, what that means is that he can no longer call himself Prince Andrew. He will be a commoner. And the reality of that is no, he's not. He will always be a prince because he is in line to the throne. That cannot be removed. Actually, I think that can be removed, but I think that has to be government. Yeah, I think the government has to actually remove him from I think he's 6th or 8th in line to the throne, and he would have to be cut from that by the government, I think. So he's lost a lot. For him, this is huge. And it's good. It's the right thing to do. I would like to see... I had a kind of fantasy thought about this for a moment the other day when I heard that, was that wouldn't it be cool if Andrew spilled everything and in return he got something, right? In return, we gave him something. And what would that look like to a royal? It would look like what all people with wealth and power want, and that's admiration. They don't want more money. They only want more money because we don't give them enough admiration. They want titles, and they want gongs, they want medals, they want acknowledgement. You know, you're the bestest billionaire ever award. And I don't know, there was just a really fleeting thought in my head for a moment that wouldn't it be good if Andrew just spilled everything and we gave him back something, even if that was just a generous pension or no prison time or something like that. That would be interesting. So my thoughts on that are that it's good. And the king was, you know, that's his brother. That's his little brother. And that's pretty serious to them. And so I thought it was pretty cool. Okay. Trump and Epstein weren't just guys circulating in the same circles. They were buddies. And to a degree, so was Andrew. Well, not to a degree. He totally was. You know, they stayed at each other's places. You're friends. Sarah knows. Oh my, why did she divorce him? Sarah Ferguson knows. No, he wouldn't exactly, Ocean. But what I mean, you know, he wouldn't have any evidence. I don't know. I would like to, you know, I would like to hear someone else say it. I would like to hear him say who did what with whom. And, you know, we could do with that what we will, but we know. I mean, it's part of. If I go back to the idea about the list that everybody wants released, we know who's on that list. We don't need the list. We know who was there. There are photos. You see, this is the thing. Everyone focuses on the island, and everybody focuses on, you know, whether they spent time with Epstein. It's not that. It's these people with such great wealth and power do things that normal people wouldn't do. Some normal people do as well, but just generally, these people are living in a very different daily existence to the rest of us, and they, to a degree, are beyond help. And so it's not just about when they went to the island and did this. This is who they are, who they've become, and it's not confined to any geographical place. It's something that they did gradually, and you know, what do we say? When somebody, what's the word for when somebody goes from just, you know, killing bugs to doing other things? Brain fog. Escalates. A very simple word. Escalates. So, you know, they escalate, and they don't even really notice how bad they're getting. I'm sure that Andrew believes that some of the things he did weren't wrong. I'm sure he believes that, but I'm sure he knows that he was in the wrong. Very popular these days. Character assassination of the oligarchy. I'm all for that. Yeah. Yeah. Because it's not who they were, it's who they've become. You know, that's, I mean, take a look at some of the oligarchs and look at what they did to become what they are. They were good people, but they're not anymore. In today's world, we have to blame the billionaires for... No, see, this is getting back to my core beliefs. This is, I think, the problem with the way people think about politics and society, is they think that when you say something, you're blaming that thing 100%. When you blame billionaires for the things that some of them do, you're not blaming them for 100% of your problems. You're saying that they're a contributing factor, just like I talked earlier about colonization being a contributing factor to the decline of certain countries, or the inability of countries to escape poverty and you know, continuous internal issues. It's not just that one thing that did that, it's a combination of things. So colonization is not the single reason why so many countries are in dire straits. And it's the same with billionaires. They're not the reason why there's not social mobility. The reason why there's not social mobility is a long chain of events that has created billionaires. So it's the billionaires are the result of a system, and therefore the billionaires have to be reined in. And, you know, China just did this. You know, if you want to look at what China just did with the real estate bubble that burst there, and everyone was saying, oh, it's the end of the Chinese economy. They bailed out the bottom. They bailed out millionaires. China bailed out millionaires. And they bailed out the people under them. But they didn't bail out the billionaires. They let the billionaires fail, partly because that helps them maintain their power, because billionaires get mouthy, and China doesn't want a lot of mouthy billionaires. And, you know, it's a practical move. But also, it's a populist move because the people underneath who invested money in these companies got some of it back. Obama could have done that. Instead of bailing out the finance bros, he could have bailed out the savers. Instead of bailing out the car companies, he could have bailed out the workers while they retrained and did other things. Oh, yeah, yeah. Yeah, billionaires are a problem. Yeah. Yeah, billionaire and inherited wealth is a big problem. It is. I believe in inheritance, but I don't think that families should inherit billions and billions of dollars that was made by an amazing person. Because, the old saying goes, have you ever met the great son of a great man? No. So, great men or great people can have monuments built to them and their money given back to the community. That's the way I see it. We're continuing with today's theme, which is core beliefs. I think I've... Okay. So, continuing on this theme, another core belief I have is that most of the problems in society are caused by inequality. And I actually had people attack me about what was I talking about? And I can't even remember what it was I was talking about. Oh, DEI, because I think DEI is important. And they said, look at Norway and Finland and Northern Europe. It's like, you guys, you're such hypocrites. Every time they want to talk about taxes, they say, look at how much the Europeans are paying in taxes. They're crazy. Let's not be like them. And then when they want to talk about we don't need DEI, they're like, look at Northern Europe. They don't have to do DEI. And it's like, it's not, they're trying to say that homogeneity, right, produces innovation and good results. And my argument is no, DEI does. But what they fail to remember is that those societies do pay a lot of tax and they're fairly equal. There's not a lot of social unrest. There's not a lot of disparity. There's not a lot of problems that are going to come up like they do in the US. And this is where you don't need to have that kind of diversity and, enforced there because they are functioning without that distrust. And that it's not the homogeneity that brings that, it's the redistribution of wealth that brings that. And so if you want to do away with DEI, I would love to see that DEI is no longer needed. One way of getting that is to develop a high trust society. And what does that mean? Get rid of inequality. So make a more egalitarian society. Now, how do you do that when you don't have it? DEI, right? Full circle. So, if your goal is to not have DEI, you need to have DEI so you can get there. It's pretty basic. It's like, if you are somebody that has little stress in your life, if you're fairly comfortable, safe and certain, and then society says, hey, we're thinking about bringing this in, how about these advancements, woke stuff, you're less inclined to be against it because you want everyone to be happy because you're happy. And two, you're not angry and you're not blaming wrong targets, which is what I find happens a lot. Like when people believe that Canada is the enemy Like, what? Canada? That's nuts. Canada's ripping you off. What? Come on. A great big country, but a tiny little economy to your north. It's not Canada that's ripping you off, right? It's yourself. It's your own corporations and your own government that's ripping you off. So, that's my sort of core belief there, that inequality is the root problem. If you have less inequality, you'll have a better functioning society, and you won't need DEI.
If you're still here, honestly, you have no idea how much it helps if you subscribe. I'll keep these coming.